She was the worst boss I'd ever had, arrogant, power-hungry, and obsessed with control. Overnight, my work life became a nightmare, but I wasn't about to quit. No, I had a much more satisfying plan. One that involved her favorite meeting room, a certain delivery guy, and a revenge she never saw coming, though she definitely sat in the middle of it. Literally. Before she walked in, work wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. We had a steady rhythm, emails answered, meetings kept short, and tasks done without someone breathing down our necks. My previous boss was fair, trusted us to do our jobs, and gave credit where it was due. We had weekly bonuses if we hit our numbers, and staying a little late wasn't a problem, it was appreciated. Honestly, it felt more like a team than a workplace. Then came her, the new director. Let's call her Deborah. From the moment Deborah strutted through the glass doors in her designer heels, the energy shifted. She didn't introduce herself with humility or curiosity. No, she made a speech. Loud, dramatic, and dripping with arrogance. I've been brought in because I am smarter than anyone who has been here before, she said, with a straight face and a smirk. The room went silent, like we all had a collective. Did she just say that? Moment. Day one, she rearranged the entire office layout, claimed it would increase transparency. But really, it gave her a better line of sight to hover over everyone's desks. She canceled our casual Fridays, scrapped team lunches, and insisted on daily status reports. Daily. For tasks that hadn't changed in years. She wanted to know every step, every click. Every decision basically demanded we narrate our workday like a live podcast just for her. Her need for control was something else. She'd interrupt meetings to correct people over minor things, word choice, tone, even posture. She once told a coworker, "If you spoke with more confidence, you might actually be worth listening to." We laughed about it in private, but at the time, it cut deep. It was her trademark, backhanded compliments disguised as leadership. And she didn't just want control, she wanted to be worshipped. She loved the sound of her own voice, so much that every meeting turned into a monologue. If someone offered a good idea, she'd find a way to reword it and claim it as her own. If a client complimented our work, she'd somehow twist it into praise for her leadership style. It wasn't long before the red flags started turning into red sirens. She played favorites, but not based on performance, just whoever stroked her ego best. She'd withhold information to keep people off balance, then pretend like we'd dropped the ball. I'd find out about meetings only after they'd happened. Important emails conveniently never included me. She once even accused me of missing a deadline I wasn't assigned to, just so she could assert dominance in front of the team. It was like she was trying to rewrite the rules of reality, one petty move at a time. I started keeping notes, dates, times, receipts because I knew it was only a matter of time before her power trip collided with something bigger. At first, I thought maybe it was just growing pains, new management trying to establish authority. But nah, this wasn't leadership, it was a one-woman dictatorship, and I was stuck in the middle of it. But I wasn't going to stay a victim, not for long. If there was a simple way to do something, Deborah would find the absolute longest, most convoluted route possible just to prove she was involved. What used to be a straightforward 3-step process for submitting client updates suddenly ballooned into a 10-point checklist that included copying her on every single email, filling out duplicate forms, and sitting through a review call that never actually improved anything. It was like being in a group project with someone who does nothing but insists on approving every slide. And don't even get me started on the color-coded spreadsheets she made us fill out daily. We're talking entries like mood upon arrival and estimated focus level. She once rejected someone's submission for writing content instead of satisfied in the mood column. Said it was too vague. Like we were employees, not survey subjects in some corporate psychology experiment. One of the most maddening things she did was hover. I'd be in the middle of drafting a report, headphones on, clearly focused, and she'd just appear like a shadow out of nowhere. She'd lean against the doorway and start with, "Quick question," even though there was nothing quick about it. It was never about something she didn't know she'd ask about a file we both had access to or a conversation she was already CC'd on, but it wasn't about the answer. It was about how I answered. She'd watch my facial expressions, the tone of my voice, the pauses in my speech, as if I was on trial. Sometimes she wouldn't even respond, just stare. That awful silence that made you second guess whether you'd said something wrong. Then she'd just walk away without a word like some weird power flex. I started calling it the test. My coworkers felt it too. One girl cried in the supply room after Deborah asked her to redefine her purpose in this department. Another guy had to redo a full week's worth of data entry because Deborah didn't like the spacing on the report. She once held a 90-minute meeting to talk about email font consistency. 90 minutes. Over fonts. Even mundane stuff became dramatic. Want to leave 5 minutes early? You'd need to send an Outlook invite, a written reason, and CC 2 managers. Want to book a conference room? Better submit a calendar request and wait for her to approve it even if the room was empty. It was bureaucracy for the sake of control, and it drained us all. And while all of that was ridiculous, it was the inconsistency that made it worse. One day, she'd praise someone for taking initiative. The next day, she'd scold that same person for overstepping. There were no rules, only moods. If she liked you, you got away with stuff. If you didn't, kiss up. You were suddenly not aligned with the company vision. I started feeling like I was losing my grip. I'd wake up dreading the day. Every email notification made my stomach drop. I'd rehearse answers in my head before even speaking just to avoid triggering one of her stares. Coworkers started skipping lunches, keeping their heads down, and avoiding eye contact, just stay under the radar. We weren't a team anymore. We were a bunch of survivors trying not to get picked off. It wasn't just professional exhaustion, it was emotional whiplash. I loved my job before she came. I took pride in it. But under Deborah's reign, it became a game of endurance. Could you make it to Friday without a public dressing down? Could you finish your tasks without being micromanaged into madness? Eventually, I stopped engaging. I did the bare minimum, played the game, and smiled through gritted teeth. But behind that smile, something else started growing: resentment. And when resentment simmers long enough, it starts to look a lot like revenge. I just didn't know yet how delicious that revenge was going to be. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just forgetful. Maybe she had too much on her plate. But no, it wasn't long before I realized Deborah wasn't just disorganized. She was deliberate. I'd open my inbox and find email threads with decisions already made, deadlines already passed, meetings already held threads I was supposed to be on, but mysteriously wasn't. When I asked about it, she'd raise an eyebrow and say, "Oh, I could have sworn I included you." Every single time, after the fifth or sixth accidental omission, it was clear. I wasn't being forgotten. I was being excluded. What made it worse was that she always made a point to bring up those missed emails in front of others. Like it was my fault. I didn't know. Well, if you'd read the thread, you'd understand the direction. It didn't even matter how politely I explained that I never received it. She'd just smile like she knew something I didn't and change the subject. That smile, condescending, smug, fake, was her favorite weapon. Meanwhile, everyone else still had their privileges intact. The overtime I'd regularly been approved for under the old boss? Gone. No explanation. I'd submit the same kind of requests I always had and they'd get lost in review or simply denied without reason. I watched coworkers come in early or stay late hours they were being paid for, while I was warned not to blur work-life boundaries. Oh, please. Then came bonus season. Under the previous director, we had a clear system: performance metrics, deliverables, timelines. I always hit my numbers, sometimes exceeded them. Bonuses was small but meaningful enough to treat myself or cover unexpected bills. But this time, nothing. I waited. Checked the payroll twice. Everyone else got theirs. When I finally worked up the nerve to ask Deborah directly, she tilted her head and said, maybe there just wasn't enough budget for everyone. I felt that punch in my gut. It wasn't just petty anymore. It was targeted. I was being boxed out professionally, financially, mentally. And she wanted me to notice. That was the worst part. She got off on the control, the confusion, the quiet chaos she sewed behind that pristine smile and expensive blazer. It was like she wanted me to question myself, to wonder if I really was slipping, if maybe I didn't deserve what I'd worked for. It started to bleed into my life outside the office. I was constantly anxious, checking emails obsessively, replaying conversations in my head, trying to figure out what I'd done to make her zero in on me. My paychecks got tighter without the overtime and bonuses, which meant cutting back less, eating out, fewer social plans, always worried something might go wrong financially. My stress level was through the roof and my confidence in the gutter. The kicker was that it wasn't just me imagining this. My coworkers noticed too. Why weren't you in that meeting? Didn't she say you were handling that project? Wait, you didn't get a bonus? They were careful, whispering behind closed doors, but I could tell they knew something wasn't right. Some tried to defend her, maybe she was under pressure. Maybe it was all coincidence, but deep down we all knew. She had picked her target, and it was me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about performance. It wasn't even about control. It was personal. Somewhere along the line, I must have bruised her ego, challenged her authority without meaning to, or maybe just existed in a way that irritated her. Whatever the reason, Deborah wasn't managing, she was retaliating, and that flipped a switch in me. Because I realized I couldn't play defense forever. She wanted to break me, but I wasn't about to give her that satisfaction. She might have had the title, the emails, the budget, but I had something better. I had patience. And soon enough I'd have a plan. It was a Thursday afternoon, right after one of Deborah's infamous 90-minute status recalibration meetings, when I saw it, an actual sparkle in her eye. No, she wasn't inspired by team synergy or quarterly numbers. The source of her sudden cheerfulness? Our delivery guy. He was tall, charming, and carried himself with the kind of easy confidence that didn't need to say much to be noticed. I'd been flirting with him for months, harmless at first, smiles, a little banter about caffeine addictions and crazy clients. But lately it had gotten warmer. He lingered a little longer at my desk. I found little smiley faces drawn on my packages. We had a vibe and we both knew it. But Deborah, she'd just caught on. At first, it was small, her eyes following him a bit too long when he entered the office. Then came the comments, made just loud enough for whoever was nearby to hear. He's got that rugged delivery guy look, doesn't he? Or if I were a few years younger. With a giggle no one asked for. You could tell she thought she was being subtle. She wasn't. She started lingering by the front when deliveries were scheduled. Suddenly she was the one signing for packages, flipping her hair, laughing too loudly at things that weren't funny. She even asked for his name one day, then said it out loud 3 times like she was trying to memorize it for a fantasy. Jason, Ja's son. I almost choked on my coffee. It was wild to watch this woman who spent every day trying to assert her dominance through rigid control and condescending speeches, now acting like a flustered schoolgirl with a clipboard. She'd adjust her blazer, smooth her skirt, and position herself just so, waiting for him like it was a runway entrance. And every time he gave me that wink or called me by a nickname, her smile would twitch just slightly. She noticed. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just amusing anymore. It was useful. I had something she wanted, something she couldn't manipulate or micromanage. She could block my emails, cancel my bonuses, and exclude me from meetings, but she couldn't fake chemistry. And the fact that he didn't give her the time of day? Oh, that made it even better. Because while she was tripping over herself trying to impress him, Jason and I were already texting. We'd been flirting under her nose the whole time, and now we both saw the opportunity. I told him everything about her power games, her sabotage, her weird fixation on him. He found it hilarious. He even agreed to turn up the charm a notch when she was around, just to drive the point home. So we did. He'd lean in a little closer when handing me a package, toss in a "see you later, gorgeous," as she watched from the hallway. I'd smile wider, laugh a little louder, throw in a playful touch on his arm. It was harmless flirting, but strategically placed. Deborah noticed. All right. Her comments got more passive-aggressive. It's unprofessional to flirt at work, she said once without making eye contact. Another time, she tried assigning me a task that conveniently pulled me away from the front desk during delivery time. Too bad Jason was happy to make a detour to my office. It was like flipping the script. For once I was the one in control. And it felt good, like I was reclaiming a part of myself she'd tried to snuff out. What started as chemistry became my secret weapon. She could have the title. I had the upper hand. And I was just getting started. After weeks of silent battles and strategic flirtation, I decided it was time to stop playing defense and start using my advantage. I wasn't just going to enjoy the sparks with Jason. I was going to set the whole stage on fire. If Deborah wanted to play games, I was going to play chess, with her ego as the pawn. It started small, more eye contact. Inside jokes exchanged loud enough for her to overhear. A casual "see you later" handsome tossed over my shoulder as he walked out. He'd match my energy perfectly, flashing a grin, giving me playful side glances, even leaning on my desk just a little too long while chatting. The office, once a cold space of tight collars and clipped emails, suddenly had this undercurrent of something warmer, and she noticed. Oh, she definitely noticed. Her reactions were priceless. She'd walk by mid-conversation, pretending to be busy with a file that didn't exist, trying to catch snippets. She'd clear her throat loudly, as if to remind us she was still there. Sometimes she'd interrupt completely, asking Jason questions she already knew the answers to, just to insert herself. "So, Jason, how's your route? Must be exhausting lifting all those heavy boxes." He'd nod politely, give her a short answer, and then turn right back to me, the irritation in her eyes. Chef's kiss. One day, she tried to join our conversation like we were all besties. Jason had just brought in a package and handed it directly to me with a "you always get the good stuff." I laughed, and she slid into the exchange like an offbeat background dancer. "Oh, what's the good stuff? Am I missing out?" she asked, smiling like a shark in heels. Jason, bless him, didn't skip a beat. He looked at her, then me, then said, "Just a little inside joke," and left it at that. You could practically hear her teeth grinding. It was like a role reversal. All the power she tried to strip from me with her micromanaging, I was now reclaiming in front of her, without saying a single unprofessional word. And the best part? She couldn't call it out without sounding petty. If she said something, she'd be admitting she cared. And she cared a lot. Then came the bold move. It was a late Thursday evening, and I stayed back to finish up some reports. Jason knew I had keys to the office perks from my years of loyal service. I texted him. "Office is quiet. Wanna stop by?" He didn't hesitate. The thrill was ridiculous. We kept it respectful on the outside. Technically, I was finishing work. But when he showed up, the look in his eyes told me he was all in. I let him in through the back, lights low, the buzz of the vending machine the only sound in the building. I don't even know what came over me, but I walked straight to the conference room. Her conference room. The same one where she conducted every single team meeting, every performance review, every little power play. I looked at that polished oak table and grinned. Jason got the message. We didn't just make out, we made a statement. That table, usually a cold stage for Deborah's control tactics, suddenly became ours, warm, thrilling, alive. Every folder she ever slammed, every pen she ever clicked in frustration, it all faded in that moment. All that stress, all that resentment burned off with every kiss, every laugh, every glance we exchanged. And it wasn't just that night. We turned it into our little tradition. After hours meetups, always respectful, always discreet, but always in that room, on that table. We joked that it was a form of spiritual cleansing, turning something toxic into something fun. Every time I walked into a meeting afterward, I'd sit across from her and smile to myself. Every time she placed her notebook down or leaned against the table, I'd hold back a laugh. She had no idea where she was sitting. No idea what had happened there the night before. And I had no plans to tell her. The power shifted. I felt lighter, more in control. Like I had my spark back. The office still had its politics and pressures, sure, but now I had my own private rebellion, a secret source of joy that she couldn't touch. And watching her try harder and harder to impress Jason, while he kept gravitating toward me, was the sweetest revenge. It wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was subtle, strategic, and oh so satisfying. And the best part, I still had one more trick up my sleeve. The first time it happened, I wasn't even sure I'd go through with it. The office was dark, dead quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. I had just wrapped up some late reports, the kind Deborah used to obsess over. Jason texted that he was nearby, and before I could second guess myself, I responded with 3 words, "Doors unlocked. Come." When he walked in, everything shifted. There was this electric pause, no words, just eyes locking, the kind of silence that carries weight, the kind that makes your skin tingle. The glow of the emergency exit signs painted soft shadows on the walls. We didn't rush, we didn't need to. We were both fully aware of the moment and where we were. I led him straight to the conference room. That room had always felt clinical, cold, the lighting too bright, the chairs too stiff, the table too polished. Deborah's domain, her throne, her war table. Every time we sat around it, we felt her presence before she even entered. The way she paced at the head, clicked her pen, glared at whoever dared to question her vision. That table had seen countless power plays. But tonight it was going to see something entirely different. I hopped up on the edge of it slowly. Jason leaned in, one hand on my waist, the other brushing my hair back behind my ear. There was a beat, half lust, half laughter, like we were both thinking, are we really doing this here? Yes, we were. Every sound was louder in the quiet. The creak of the chair when he moved, the soft thud of his boots on the floor, the rustle of my skirt. Every touch felt magnified, every kiss deeper. The thrill wasn't just in the secrecy, it was in the symbolism. We weren't just hooking up. We were rewriting the energy in that space. For once, that table was about pleasure, not pressure. It was risk, rebellion, and release all wrapped into one. And after that night, we were hooked. It became our thing. Late evenings after everyone had gone home, I'd send a subtle text, leave the back door open, and he'd show up like a reward for surviving another day of Deborah's dictatorship. We'd sneak in quietly, never leaving a trace, always the conference room, always that table. We laughed more, got bolder. One night we even brought dessert cupcakes from a nearby bakery. He fed me one while I sat on the edge of the table, frosting on my lip, his thumb brushing it away. I nearly lost it when I realized it was the same brand of cupcakes Deborah demanded during quarterly review, said they helped elevate the meeting tone. Elevate this, Deborah. The longer this continued, the more empowered I felt. I'd sit in meetings the next day watching her shuffle her notes, wipe crumbs off the table, and flip through her printouts like she was conducting a symphony. And all I could think was, your kingdom has been compromised. Right beneath your nose. Right beneath you. She had no idea that just hours before, that very table had been the scene of a very different kind of performance. One she wasn't directing, and that was the sweetest part. She didn't know. She'd never suspect it. Because to her, I was just the quiet one she overlooked, the one she could push around. She thought she held all the power in that room. She was dead wrong. Every time I saw her plant herself in her chair at the head of that table, crossing her legs like a smug queen, I smiled to myself. She was sitting right where I had been the night before, bare thighs against the wood, fingers gripping the edge, lips pressed to someone who actually saw me. The ultimate inside joke, and she was smack in the middle of it. That table had become my sanctuary, my stress relief, my protest sign. It wasn't just about sex, it was about control. Taking something she used to dominate and turning it into my playground. A symbol of quiet resistance in a war she didn't even realize she was losing. And every smug word that came out of her mouth during those meetings, they didn't sting anymore, not like they used to. Because no matter how superior she tried to sound, I had something she didn't, a secret she could never take away. There was a strange kind of serenity in watching her, the woman who once made my daily life feel like a minefield, now perched unknowingly in the very center of my private rebellion. Meetings resumed as usual. Deborah, armed with her color-coded notes and performative enthusiasm, would sweep into the conference room like she was stepping onto a stage. And I'd be sitting there, calm, composed, and secretly amused. She always chose the same seat, right at the head of the table. The exact spot where Jason and I had made sure to spend a little extra time. Her ritual never changed. She'd drop her notebook, adjust her seat, open her laptop like it was the crown jewel of productivity. Sometimes she'd even lean back, one arm draped across the top of the chair like she was posing for a leadership magazine cover. And then came the snacks. Reps and clients would occasionally bring in baked goods or fruit platters, little tokens to stay on our good side. Deborah treated these gifts like tribute offerings. She'd sift through the trays, comment on the presentation, and then settle into her throne with some delicate pastry or sugary confection. She'd eat slowly, deliberately, right there at the table, licking frosting off her fingers, licking power off the surface. But I'd just sit there, still, neutral expression, maybe a small smile if someone made a joke, nothing suspicious. But inside, I was glowing. Because I knew something she didn't, something she never would. She was sitting exactly where I'd had the best kind of revenge. Right where my bare skin had been, where my laughter had echoed late into the night, where I reclaimed control over my life one bold act at a time. She carried herself like she owned the room, but the truth was, the most important thing happening in that room wasn't hers. It was mine. There was something beautifully ironic about it all. Here she was, puffed up with self-importance, eating cupcakes while talking about productivity metrics. And I am just a few feet away, remembering the night Jason fed me one with the lights dimmed and the door locked. Every smug statement she made, this team performs best under structure. Professionalism is about consistency. Leadership is earned, not given, landed with less and less weight. She didn't even realize her so-called fortress of control had become my little theater of rebellion. The power dynamic shifted, and not in the way she could ever measure on a spreadsheet. She could exclude me from emails. She could block my bonus. She could cancel my overtime. But she couldn't touch this. Every time she praised herself or dismissed someone else's idea, I had a shield. A secret that turned her arrogance into comedy. I no longer felt tension in those meetings, just patience. Like I was watching a bad actor playing a part in a play that had already ended. And the best part? I didn't need to tell anyone. There was no need for a confrontation or a dramatic takedown. She wouldn't understand it anyway. She lived for visible victories, public praise, titles, control, but my revenge? It was quiet, personal, poetic, and absolutely perfect. In the end, she still thought she had the upper hand. But every smug comment, every power trip became less effective because I held the ultimate secret. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes the sweetest justice is knowing something they never will. And every time she sat at that table, she became part of my private victory.